I stared up at Maya from the warm, unyielding floor, a cruel smile slicing through the dim light like a jagged blade. The chill of the concrete seeped through my clothes, biting into my skin, while my back pressed hard against the rough wall behind me. My heart slammed against my ribs, each beat a thunderous echo in my ears, drowning out the faint, omnipresent hum that vibrated through the air like a living thing. Why was she here? What did I miss? How had I been so blind, walking straight into this nightmare? My mind raced, fragments of panic colliding. The messages I'd prepared, those frantic writings typed out in stolen moments, the schematics I'd pored over in dingy motels, the desperate pleas to anyone who might believe me. If I could just reach my phone, send them out into the void, but it was too late for regrets. A metallic tang of fear coated my tongue. This had started with Maya, her warm laugh echoing in my memory like a ghost, and now it would end me, the final piece fitting into the network, my new home. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You never know what will come for you if you do not. You have now entered the blue. It began 3 years ago when Maya vanished, leaving a void that clawed at my insides every waking moment. We'd been together for what felt like forever, our lives intertwined in a haze of late-night coding sessions and whispered dreams. She was the brilliant one, her fingers dancing over keyboards in hidden labs, her eyes alight with excitement as she murmured about networks that could free minds from the relentless grind of existence, the bills, the isolation, the quiet despair. I was just the guy who believed in her, who followed her into the shadows, holding her hand as we delved deeper into tech's forbidden edges. Her touch had been my anchor, soft and reassuring against my calloused palms. Then that fateful night at the Mainframe, the letter in my pocket, Maya's last words, it rang in my head, these digital whispers of a system that lured the lost and the weak, promising an escape from the pain. They called it the network, but I knew the truth. It was a ravenous hive, devouring souls, one insidious connection at a time. Maya had been pulled in, her vibrant mind trapped in its suffocating web. The thought of her in there alone and fragmented twisted my gut with a nausea that never fully faded. I'd spent every day since hunting its hubs, risking everything, my sanity, my freedom, to find a way to shut it down. Letters and messages from unknown sources directed to Maya's login. She was leading me. The deeper I tread, the darker it got. Then, like the beacon of hope at the end of a tunnel, it appeared. A file. The file. An experiment on minds that resisted the signal, that got caught halfway, unable to leave their physical forms. There was one specific name. Trevor. Labeled Jar Number 1. A brain in a jar. Sleepless nights blurred into one another, haunted by visions of her pleading eyes. And now here I was at what I thought was the central mainframe, the air thick with the promise of finality. The building loomed in the twilight like a monolithic predator, a fortress of rusted steel and shadowed secrets in a forgotten corner of town where even the wind seemed to whisper warnings. Lights blazed around the perimeter, harsh and unblinking, casting long, distorted shadows that swallowed the cracked pavement of the street. The faint scent of ozone hung in the air, mingled with the distant rot of urban decay. I'd staked out dozens of sites like this, abandoned warehouses reeking of mold and neglect, underground bunkers damp with groundwater. Each one a pulsing node in the network's sprawling invisible empire. But this one was different, a cold certainty settling in my bones. The intel pointed here, unusual data spikes I'd tracked through encrypted forums, missing persons reports clustering like flies around a corpse. I leaned back, taking a granola bar from my duffel bag that sat on the seat beside me. Resting my hands on the steering wheel, I opened it, my stomach growling before I could pop the broken bar into my mouth. Leaning back against the seat, pulling the binoculars from my lap, I scanned the building and the rest of the street. This time there was movement. Their presence hit me like a wave of dread, a visceral knot in my stomach. Arriving in waves, first hesitant singles shuffling under the dim flickering streetlights, then pairs, trios, marching with an unnatural mechanical precision that made my skin crawl. Their faces were blank masks, dead eyes staring into nothingness, strides synchronized like marionettes on invisible strings. No chatter, no fleeting glances of humanity, just a relentless, silent flow into the building, their footsteps a rhythmic thud that echoed in my chest. I counted hundreds in mere minutes, a swarming tide vanishing through the yawning doors, the air growing heavier with subtle, acrid scent of unwashed bodies and something metallic, like overheated circuits. How many were out there, really? Thousands? Millions? The network didn't turn you into a shambling zombie from old movies. It was subtler, more insidious, a horror that burrowed into your thoughts. It whispered through Wi-Fi signals, through glowing apps and screens that promised solace, preying on the exhausted, the disillusioned, those whose wills had frayed like mine. It whispered through Wi-Fi signals, through glowing apps and screens that promised solace, preying on the exhausted, the disillusioned, those whose wills had frayed like mine. Let go, it murmured in the quiet hours. No more worries. Join us. I'd felt that pull myself in the darkest moments, a seductive warmth spreading through my veins like poison. After losing Maya, oblivion sounded almost sweet. A release from the aching emptiness, but I couldn't surrender. Not while she was in there suffering, her essence diluted in that digital abyss. The thought of her voice, once so full of life, now echoing as fragmented code, fueled a rage that burned hot in my throat. I waited in the shadows of my car, the vinyl seat sticky against my back until the line thinned to a trickle, then stopped altogether. 3 minutes of eerie silence stretched like an eternity, the only sound my ragged breathing and the distant hum of the city fading into nothingness. My duffel bag was slung over my shoulder, tools clinking softly inside, a knife's cold handle pressing against my palm, and the modified dead switch device Maya had left clues about in her encrypted files, its weight a tangible hope. It was a failsafe she'd hinted in those final messages hidden deep in the code for those who resisted. Plug it in, trigger the chain reaction, and the whole network crumbles, a cascade of digital death. If I could just reach the core, feel its pulsing heart under my fingers. I slipped from my car, the door clicking shut with a finality that sent a shiver down my spine. Balaclava pulled low, the fabric rough and suffocating against my face. One last glance at my phone, messages queued, ready to blast. Every contact, every shadowy forum I'd seeded over the years. Proof of the horror. Schematics sketched in frantic bursts. Ways to shield your mind with Faraday cages and mental mantras. If I didn't make it out, at least the truth would escape, a faint spark in the darkness. The building's lights flickered off one by one, plunging it into an oppressive gloom that pressed against my eyes. A sign? A trap? My pulse quickened, a drumbeat of terror. No time to wonder. I ran to the door, the gravel crunching under my boots, hand trembling on the handle, cold metal slick with my sweat. It swung open with a low creak, unlocked as always. The network didn't need guards. Curiosity was its most potent bait, a siren call that turned trespassers into converts, their screams silenced in the merge. Inside, the corridor stretched like throbbing veins dimly lit by flickering emergency strips that cast erratic shadows on the walls. The air was stale, laced with a chemical tang that burned my nostrils, making my eyes water. I consulted the schematics on my phone, the screen's glow a fragile beacon. Public blueprints Maya had hacked, augmented by her cryptic notes that felt like echoes in her touch. She guided me here, or so it seemed, her voice flashing in my dreams like static bursts, nudging directions with a warmth that pierced my isolation.
Trust me, Sam.
But doubt gnawed at me, a cold worm in my gut, twisting tighter with each step. The halls twisted illogically, defying the map. I took lefts, rights, backtracked from dead ends that loomed suddenly. The walls seemed to close in, brushing against my shoulders with a clammy chill. 10 minutes in, and I should have been at the foyer, but the path loomed endlessly. Sweat beaded on my forehead, trickling down my temples in salty rivulets, stinging my eyes. Was the building shifting, rearranging itself like a living organism? Or was I losing it, my mind fractured under the weight of paranoia? Finally, the foyer emerged, vast and empty, the air humming with a low static that buzzed in my skull like angry insects, vibrating through my teeth. I stuck to the walls, the rough concrete scraping my fingertips as shadows became my only cover, clinging like a second skin. Paranoia had become my constant companion, a heavy cloak, eyes always watching from unseen corners, whispers slithering through the vents like breath on my neck. The hum grew louder near the storewell door, a pulsating drone that resonated in my chest. making my breath shallow and ragged. Elevator? Too risky. The thought of enclosed metal walls closing in like a coffin. Stairs it was. Down I went. B1, B2, each level hotter, the air thickening with a sterile hospital scent, disinfectant sharp enough to taste, mixed with something organic, alive, like the faint rot of overripe fruit. By B5, the walls pulsed faintly under my palm, like skin over swollen veins, warm and yielding in a way that made bile rise in my throat. Living wires, biocircuits, the network's grotesque heart throbbing with stolen lives. Heat rose in waves, sweat soaking my clothes, plastering them to my skin like a shroud. I'd nearly been caught before in other hubs, the memory of grasping hands and dead stares sending a fresh wave of nausea. Narrow escapes that felt orchestrated, deliberate taunts like it was toying with me, savoring my fear. At B11, the stairs ended abruptly in the cave. That's what I called it. This infernal expanse where tech met flesh in a blasphemous union. Walls throbbed with rhythmic pulses, slick under my touch like fevered skin. Cables writhing like exposed tendons, carrying not just data but essence. Minds fused in a screaming digital hell. The smell hit hard now, an assault of antiseptic heat mingled with faint, sickly decay, like bodies left too long in warmth. It clawed at my throat, making me gag. I crept forward, duffel clutched tight, the strap digging into my shoulder. The dead switch was my weapon, its cold metal a talisman. Plug it into the hub and it would cascade, freeing the trapped souls or ending them mercifully in a blackout, including Maya. Vengeance burned in me, a scorching fire in my veins, but so did an aching tenderness that brought tears to my eyes. If I couldn't save her, I'd end her torment, release her from this abomination. Footsteps echoed suddenly, not mine, but deliberate, echoing off the walls like approaching doom. I froze, knife drawn, the blade's edge biting into my palm as my knuckles grew white. A voice slithering through the air, smooth and venomous.
Welcome, Sam. I see you finally decided to join us.
A woman emerged from the shadows, her form eerily perfect, skin flawless under the sickly light, but her eyes voids of humanity, bottomless pits that sucked at my soul. No trace of the wires I'd imagined ripping from her brain, but her eyes, dead glassy voids like the others staring through me.
Maya?
I whispered, the knife slipping from my numb fingers, clattering to the floor. No! The betrayal hit like a physical blow, a crushing weight on my chest, stealing my breath. I couldn't hold myself back. I knew it was useless, but I had to try. I begged her.
I know this was Lisa's doing. Maya, fight it! Come back to me! You led me here for a reason. I know you're in there.
Maya just smiled and leaned forward with a whisper.
Who led you here?
My soul crumpled. Had I been misled this whole time, falling into Lisa's trap? She was the architect of it all, or so the fragmented letters said, a woman who transcended flesh decades ago, building this empire from a basement lab long buried in forgotten history. Her ambition a cancer that spread unchecked. A twitch on Maya's face, almost anger, then realization, and the smile widened.
Trevor,
she whispered, not to me, but to the network. My muscles regained their composure.
I'll never join you!
I yelled, my voice cracking. Stumbling back on legs that felt like jelly.
I'd rather die!
Oh, that's no way to be, Sam. We can live together forever.
Maya's laugh chilled me to the core, a hollow, echoing sound that reverberated in my bones. More footsteps, slow and measured. My stomach dropped, a plummeting void as more mindless vessels walked down the hallway and fell into neatly placed rows beside her. It had been a trap all along. Her guidance. The schematics that felt like her gentle nudges, the dreams where her voice wrapped around me like an embrace, all bait, poisoned hooks in my heart. I trusted too much, clung to the illusion that I could best the strength of the network. But she was its puppet now, her essence twisted into something unrecognizable. Lisa knew I couldn't fight Maya. The care that once warmed me now paralyzed. A dagger in my soul. That's why she was here, to exploit that weakness. Desperate, my hands shaking uncontrollably, I fumbled for my phone, pressing the sequence to send the messages with slick, sweat-drenched fingers. Let the world know, expose the seeds I'd planted in the dark corners of the web, ignite a resistance. Maya laughed, a chorus that grated like nails on bone.
You think you can escape the network? We are the signal. We've upgraded.
Maya extended her hand, her fingers, once so tender, now cold and mechanical in their grace.
Come, Sam, join us. You're the final step.
Never. I resisted with all my might. They would never have my mind. The world went black. I woke up in a small room. No furniture, no bed, no chair, just a warm, almost heated floor. The door was a simple metal frame with a small window. There was no handle on the door. How had I been so stupid? And then I heard it, a buzzing sound and a chirp. It was my phone. I reached into my pocket to check if the messages had sent. Failed to connect to network. What a joke! The one time I needed to, hope began to fade. Then a click. I tried the door. It opened. Was it Maya? Had she broken through, that piece of her still hanging on? I knew she was in there. I opened the door, and my phone chirped again. There was a message. Get to the mainframe, and a map. My location like a GPS. I snagged my duffel bag and began to run. I could hear voices in the distance. I didn't know if they were in my head or not. I placed my hand on the handle, but the door did not open. Then there was a beep, and it unlocked. I opened it and ran down another hallway. I looked at the phone. It was still a ways into the building. But I could get there, and then footsteps, voices, more of them, clamoring closer. Red dots began to appear on the phone as I looked up the schematics. A new route appearing. I darted through side rooms, this maze of a basement. How was it so large? Why did it go on for so long? I ran on, my breath heaving, my heart pounding, my legs getting heavier. But I was almost there. 3 more rooms. I just had to make it. The dots were closing in. I could hear the footsteps closing in. I could almost feel the voices on top of me whispering in my ear. All I had to do was connect the dead switch to the network. I knew exactly where the input was. It was this last door, one last obstacle in my way. Maya. She stood with that smile. It haunted me.
Welcome to your final destination.
Those eyes stared into my soul, my mind too frantic to place thought. A glint in those eyes, a reminder of who she used to be floating to the surface before drowning again. Could I trust her? We stood in front of the door, preparing for the end. She opened the door for me. The sight on the other side broke my will. In the vast, swirling digital expanse of the network, Trevor stirred. A fragment of consciousness amid the cacophony of merged minds. A scream pierced the void, a mind fighting, raw and familiar. A new voice to the network, a clear drum ringing above the rest. A mind that knew how to resist, but it couldn't last long. Trevor would have to play his trump card, the biggest gamble, Maya. His conduit to the outside world, the fragile seed he'd planted years ago in a desperate bid to resist, to cling to his humanity. He'd hidden shards of himself in the code, whispering through her like a ghost in the machine, guiding someone, anyone who could strike back. Now her essence was caged, a flickering light dimming in the oppressive dark. Probing deeper, threads of data snaking through his awareness, he traced the chaos. Sam, the plan unfolding, but twisting into something grotesque, a knot of failure tightening around him. Lisa's voice boomed in his consciousness, that same mocking tone from half a century ago, laced with the sibling cruelty that still stung like fresh wounds.
Trevor, you're not a very good boy, are you? Even as a brain in a jar, you're troublesome. But I have a secret for you.
He ignored the bait, the taunt that echoed their fractured childhood, sifting through the data streams with a weary determination. Sam, here in the core, his presence a bright anomaly amid the uniformity, vulnerable yet key, a beacon that stirred something deep in Trevor's disembodied soul. Trevor had fought from his jar for decades, since fleeing their childhood lab after witnessing what Lisa had become. A monster born of ambition, their parents' neglect had forged her like a blade, cold and sharp. Misguided support had enabled it, a regret that gnawed at him eternally, a phantom pain in his absent body. Now that regret fueled his resistance, a flickering flame against the encroaching void.
The secret? Have you ever thought the connection to that young man you have been helping was more than coincidence? That you were pulled by something stronger than just a will to end my suffering, as you would put it? It has been no accident that he has made it this far. I gave you my word I would not harm your wife or your son, so via extrapolation it would make sense, right? That gnawing feeling in the back of your mind. Sam is your grandson.
Shock rippled through Trevor's mind like an electric surge, fracturing his thoughts into shards of disbelief. Lisa wove herself into his mind, pressing him towards her end. He would make a mistake. Time had blurred in this limbo. How long had he floated here? A preserved brain in viscous fluid, the cold glass his eternal prison. Ellen, their son, a lineage he'd never known, a branch of life sprouting from the ashes of his failures. Pride surged through him, warm and unexpected, mingled with a sorrow that ached like a lost limb. Memories flooding in waves, comforting Lisa as children in their barren home. Her small hand in his, tears streaked her face, building crude gadgets in the basement. Laughter echoing off the damp walls. Human moments, pure and untainted before the machine devoured them. He had to act. The urgency a sharp spike in his awareness. Uploading fully into the network risked everything, dissolution, absorption, but it was the only way. A final sacrifice.
Lisa?
He projected his voice steadily after years of silence, carrying the weight of unspoken apologies.
Remember the lab before all this?
She paused, a flicker in her digital presence, almost human, a glitch of vulnerability that tugged at the remnants of his heart.
You comforted me when Mother ignored us, said we'd build our own world.
Trevor fed the nostalgia, his words a gentle lure, buying precious time as he seeped into the system like ink in water, infiltrating Sam's phone with tendrils of code. Doors unlocked with soft beeps, maps updated in real time, red alerts flaring for the pursuers closing in. He saw through cameras, felt the chase viscerally, Sam running, his breath heaving in panic, the hub drawing nearer like a black hole. Fully uploaded now, his essence dispersed yet focused. Trevor confronted her in the digital ether.
It ends now!
Lisa's laugh echoed through the expanse, a cascade of mocking data.
You've underestimated me, brother. Always did.
Through Maya's eyes, her form a borrowed vessel, he stared at Sam, the connection intimate and horrifying. Maya reached for the handle and opened the door to the mainframe. Sam's face twisted in confusion before turning, his eyes darting towards Maya. Maya reached for the handle and opened the door to the mainframe. Sam's face twisted in confusion before turning, his eyes darting towards Maya. Trevor stared through her eyes into Sam's. Realization struck him like a brick. Sam entered the brain room. Maya's body moved behind him, and what Trevor saw made him scream. Lisa stared at him, his brain sitting in the jar, the first time he had seen it from the outside. It bobbed with wires pinched across its surface, holding it steady in the liquid. Lisa smiled with dead eyes as she felt the realization sinking into the both of them. They had been played. She had been in control the whole time. Trevor fought to move Maya's body, but it was still as a statue. Before Trevor's eyes, Lisa grabbed Sam and threw him onto the table. The same one he remembered himself being on, when he had a body to feel. Trevor watched in dismay and broken sadness as Sam's brain was placed in a jar alongside his. Lisa stared at her prizes. Sam and Trevor felt her gaze through the network. They were all one family now, in mind and spirit. These brains in jars would be perfect experiments for the new evolution of the network. Using the knowledge of meditation and the power of the mind learned from Trevor, Lisa had always been 3 steps ahead. Now, with these 2 minds, she would finalize her plans. The world would be at peace. They would all join the network. They would all sing to the signal. Thank you for listening. Do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. The blue might catch up to you if you do not. You will be sure to check out more blue horror stories